You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it will be a transfer portal, recap. The portal is closed. It closed as of January 17th, but there are still some players out there that haven't signed with a team yet, and so it's not like the door is slammed shut. There's just some players that need to make up their minds if they're staying or going. So, kind of, I guess, more of an update where the transfer portal sits for BYU and Utah, respectively. I'll also go over a little bit of Real Salt Lake. They made some roster moves that I want to discuss. The Utah Mammoth and some basketball talk. So that is what we have on tap today. Thank you all so much for being here. As always, like, comment, subscribe, wherever it is, however you listen. 5 stars for the rating. Give an update. Leave a comment. That helps a lot as well. Just to keep spurring this show along. You all know I love it when you do those things for me and you interact on the social media. It's just great fun. So thank you all for doing everything you've done thus far and continue to do for me and this program. I really do appreciate that. And you can find me on Facebook, The Matt Cave Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube, same thing, The Matt Cave Podcast, and Instagram, The Matt Cave Podcast. I did miss the last couple of days for posting, so oopsie on me. The algorithm's going to punish me a little bit there, so that's on me. There's not any really like overarching reason like I was sick or anything like that. I just forgot. Yeah, oops. Happens. All right, let's dive into things. Let's start with the transfer portal tracker, and let's start with the Utes. So Utah did lose that 4-star recruit. It was 5-star in some recruiting databases, 4-star in others. He is going to Michigan. That is Salisi Moa. It was always going to happen. He signed on to play for Coach Whittingham. And players go where their coach goes. It's that simple. They also lost J.J. Buchanan, who showed up and showed out in the bowl game. He is also following Coach Whittingham and Coach Beck to Michigan. So that's a pretty big loss as well. Other than that, Smith Snowden, a guy I wanted to go to BYU, was never going to go to BYU. He's also going to Michigan along with John Henry Daly. And then Teo Johnson is going to UCLA. So that is a big talent drain. You also have Isaac Wilson going to Colorado. I only bring that name up because it's just funny. It's just funny. The Wilson name and how it was big drama that he signed with Utah over BYU. And now BYU fans go, Isaac who? It's just funny how quickly the turntables, you know what I mean? Incoming transfers to keep an eye on for the Utes, ones that I'm excited that they got. Marcus Wimberly coming from Oklahoma will fill the gap left by Teo Johnson at the safety position. Obviously, I talked about him last week. Braden Pegan is going to be a wonderful wide receiver for the Utes. Elijah Reed is going to help fill the gap left by Smith Snowden. He comes from Akron. And then Jamal Wallace, a defensive lineman coming from Tennessee. So it's not like the Utes just sat on their hands. They've got some talent coming in too. Isaiah Kemma from Ohio State. So yes, there are some guys coming in that are pretty darn good for the Utes. They may not be on the same level as what BYU was managing to grab from the portal, but these guys are no slouches either. So there is some stuff to look forward to for the Utes. A lot of players coming in, a lot of players going out. As of right now, I'm looking on 247sports.com. Right now, they have 12 incoming transfers and 20 outgoing. But among the outgoing, there still are quite a few that have not committed to a new destination. So they could very well come back to Utah. So that's where we're sitting for the Utes when it comes to the transfer portal. Now let's transition over to BYU, where outgoing transfers are 13, incoming are 9. And like I detailed on my social media posts, Kalani Sitake and company have done a wonderful job in retaining talent. That is something that only the elite programs are able to do, and a lot of them not even then. Places like Notre Dame, Georgia, like those teams experience a ton of turnover year over year. And so what Kalani Sitake and company have done at BYU is nothing short of miraculous, really. So who's leaving? Well, The biggest names that are leaving BYU are Max Alford. He is following Jay Hill to Michigan. Tavion Beasley is leaving to go to South Florida. And Lamison Waller and McKay Hillstead. Those are the big names. McKay Hillstead's going to Utah State, and Lamison Waller III is going to Southern Utah. So those are the biggest names leaving BYU. So nothing on the level of what Utah lost to the transfer portal. That's to be sure. Coming in, wow. There's not a lot. Like I said, there's only 9. But the 9 they got are really good. So first is Walker Lyons. He was like among the first to commit in the transfer portal, just period. And he's coming to BYU. There is a joke saying that Kalani Sitake is doing everything he can to make sure Ryder Lyons maintains his commitment through his mission by signing his brother. But his brother is pretty darn good. He's rated as a 4-star from 24/7 Sports. 6'4", 245 tight end coming into BYU where there's no competition for him. Like, the starting tight end position is his to lose. Other than Walker Lyons coming in from USC is Cade Uluave. This guy is a tackling machine. He's a field general. He was the best and top-rated linebacker in the portal. Yeah, 4-star, almost 5-star. So he's coming in from Cal. And then Javen Williams, a cornerback coming in from Mississippi State. Not necessarily a position of need for BYU because Evan Johnson and Terrian, they're all coming back. But you can't have too much depth when it comes to the defensive backfield. And we'll see how new defensive coordinator Kelly Poppinga decides to roll out his players. It will be different from Jay Hill. And it'll be interesting to see if he reverts back to the 3-3-5, 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. That was really popular at BYU under Bronco Mendenhall and the early years of Kalani Sitake. Or if he maintains that 3-4 or sometimes 3-2-5. So 3-2-5 meaning 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. I'll be interested to see how Kelly Poppinga decides to deploy his defense. But there's a lot of talent coming in for BYU. A lot of talent. Also, Kyler Casper coming in from Oregon, 6'6", 212. Huge wide receiver there. And another one coming in from Oregon, Roger Saleapaga, 6'4", 245. I mean, and then the linemen that they got, I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to give their sizes and whatnot, but they're mountains of human beings coming in on the O-line. So really solid and really good classes. Solid for Utah, good to almost great for BYU. If you want to see like how they rank and whatnot, currently BYU is sitting 40th in the country in terms of transfer stars coming in. Utah is 44th at the moment. So definitely top third of the country when it comes to transfer talent. Obviously, both teams are chasing Texas Tech, the team that laid an egg in the college football playoff, who got one of the top transfer quarterbacks in the portal in Brendan Sorsby. But if you listen to my review of the BYU Cincinnati game, you'll see I'm not the biggest fan of him. So it's been a good, albeit kind of small transfer class for BYU, and there is no spring portal this year. So this is the transfer portal. Then I believe the transfer portal will open up again in the fall as fall camps are going on and players learn if they are going to get playing time or not to start the season. So there is that as well after like summer camp. So this transfer portal has been better than I thought could possibly be for Kalani Sitake and company. And Morgan Scalley and company did a really good job replacing a lot of the talent that they lost. So it's not, and retaining, both teams retaining talent. So it's not the sky is falling for Utah, and it's not the bottom's going to drop out for BYU. It's really solid overall. Really solid. And I'm very interested to see how all these pieces fit together in 8 months. So it's really early to declare like a winner or anything like that, but we're still 8 months out from seeing how all of this, comes together. But Just some good stuff from both coaching staffs. All right, let's move it on to Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake signed a couple of players to the senior team, meaning these guys will be on the Real Salt Lake roster as the season begins in February. So the first one is Lucas Engel. He is formerly of Middlesbrough in the English Football Championship, which is right below the Premier League. He has also played for FC Cincinnati as well as in his native Denmark. He is a really good left-footed defender, and he is really good at pushing pace, and he's 27, so he's a veteran. So that's really good to see for Real Salt Lake. Is he a huge name? No. Is he going to move the needle in terms of ticket prices and ticket sales? Absolutely not. Will he help shore up the back end that was very leaky last season? Yes, absolutely. And then they also signed an intriguing forward in Sergi Solans. He is formerly of Girona Club de Football, which is a Spanish team. He was in their academy before he came over to the United States to play soccer for Oregon State and then UCLA. Real Salt Lake drafted him in this most recent MLS Super Draft, which I still think is so stupid that MLS has a draft. Give me a break. But whatever. It's neither here nor there. And so it's I will be interested to see how Pablo Mastroeni and crew decided to deploy him, because it's not like he's an 18-year-old kid trying to find his way. He's played in the American game before. He has scored goals. He was the number 7 goal scorer in the country last year in college. And if you listened to me last season during Real Salt Lake season, they needed offensive help other than Diego Luna, who so far through the January transfer window they've managed to keep. It's just interesting for me to see that. So this coming season will be interesting. I've been saying that word a lot, but I don't know if Real Salt Lake has done enough to get out of the Western Conference basement with the moves they've made. Because other teams like Vancouver and obviously the 2 LA clubs, even San Diego and even San Jose, they are all making moves to get to the top of the conference, whereas Real Salt Lake is just kind of tinkering as opposed to making moves. And to be fair, Salt Lake is not the same kind of market as Southern California or even Vancouver, so I get it. But, I mean, come on. Do something other than DeAndre Yedlin. It would be really nice to see. But they are getting some young talent into the senior team and not just in their academy. And whether it works out or not, I mean, Real Salt Lake has a good track record. I mean, Justin Glad, Zach McMath, there are a few guys, and McAnally, there are a few guys who were in the academy that have graduated and are solid players for MLS, but still solid players. And so they can continue to do it. They've also had a lot of brain drain from that academy to other teams, but I'm just saying, hope is not lost, but that's not a big bar to clear for Real Salt Lake when it comes to getting out of the basement. All right, so let's move it on. Let's move on to the Utah Mammoth and this homestand. They have gotten a point in 7 straight games, 8 of their last 9, which has vaulted them into the catbird seat of the wild card. So they hold the top wild card position in the NHL by 3 points over Seattle, who they just beat, as of me recording this, obviously. So over Seattle, over San Jose, Anaheim, and Los Angeles. They are 4 points clear of Nashville, and then 8 points clear of St. Louis and Calgary, who are probably going to be selling players as we get closer to the deadline. That's really good news, because the early part of the season was a gauntlet. They were playing almost every other night. They had a bunch of back-to-backs. They were on the road a ton. And now, after a road trip coming up here at the end of this week and next week, they're at home until the Olympic break, which begins February 6th. And immediately after the Olympic break, when play resumes, they are at home as well. So this is a really critical stretch of games for Utah. It has been a critical stretch of games, and they've performed. They've played well. Guys that I have been very critical of, Nick Schmaltz, I've been critical of Vejmelka, John Marino. Like, these guys are showing up, and they're showing up regularly in these games. They being Utah, have the top defensive pairing in the league since the start of the calendar year in Nate Schmidt and John Marino. Nate Schmidt just had a 4-point game, 2 goals, 2 assists against Seattle. And if you haven't watched his post-game interview after the 3 stars were announced, I encourage you to go find that on YouTube. Because if you're not rooting for Nate Schmidt yet, you will after watching that. So I'm very happy he's on the team. The road trip that's coming up is crucial. It begins Saturday, January 24th and runs through Thursday, January 29th. The key game in here is the one that starts off the road trip, and that's at Nashville. Like I pointed out in the standings check there, they are only 4 points back of the top wildcard spot, which Utah holds. The Predators also just beat Colorado in regulation, which was the first time all season that's happened, and they beat them bad. It was 7-2, I believe, or 7-3. So Nashville is starting to find their form. Luckily, Utah has found their form as well. So this week, there's only 2 games, which is really weird for this season. Wednesday against the Flyers at home, and then they hit the road on Saturday in an afternoon game against the Predators. So really key stretch of games here for Utah. If they can get points in 3 out of the 4 road games, that will be humongous. I would love to see them continue the winning streak, match the October streak, end this stretch of games before the Olympics with wins in all of them. I know that's not going to happen, but I would still like to see it. And that would put them far and away as the leaders in the wild card. Because I don't think that they are going to catch the top 3 or the big 3 of the Central Division. Colorado and Dallas are both on 2-game losing streaks. The last 10 games for the Stars have not been good. They're 2-5-3 in their last 10. By comparison, Utah is 7-2-1 in their last 10. And for those of you that are newer to hockey, obviously 7-2, that's win-loss. And then that third number is called a hockey point. If you get the game into overtime, both teams get a point. If you lose in overtime, then you only get the 1. If you win in overtime, you get both. So that's what that means. So Utah is 7-2-1. They have a positive goal differential of plus 18, which is 3rd in the Western Conference, behind only Colorado and Dallas. So this Utah Mammoth team is good. They've proven that they can skate with the best teams in the league. Like against Colorado, they've only lost by 1 goal. In fact, they even beat Colorado at one point this season. They have beaten Dallas now, and the only loss they have against Dallas was by 1 goal. So this team can skate with the best in the league. It's just they have dumpers of games against teams like the Devils, who currently sit 2nd from the bottom in the Eastern Conference. Or the Columbus Blue Jackets, who at the time of the loss were the worst team in the Eastern Conference. So consistency is a big question mark for the Mammoth. And there's nobody more chief among that consistency question than Nick Schmaltz. I'm thinking Nick Schmaltz is going to be dealt before the deadline. It's really fortunate for the front office that he is on this heater right now so that he could get traded. In my dream scenario here is that Bill Armstrong comes up with some magical formula to get a trade from the New York Rangers to get Mika Zibanejad. I think he slots in perfectly with this team. He has that leadership factor that the team lacks, and he has got goal-scoring chops. He can win face-offs, and he is magic on the power play. And if you are unfamiliar with the recent goings-on in New York, the general manager of the New York Rangers sent out a letter to the fans on Twitter basically saying, hey, this season is not what we wanted. We're going to be making some changes. So this is a general manager making his last gasp of trying to save his job. And I think Bill Armstrong should pounce. Utah has the draft capital. Utah has the youth. Utah has the flexibility under the salary cap to make a trade for Mika Zibanejad because he has a big contract. That's for sure. But Utah has a lot of cap space to play around with. The salary cap is increasing after this season. And that frees up a spot if there needs to be another forward included in the deal, like a Barrett Hayton. It frees up a spot for one of the younger guys to move up. A Tidge Aginla, perhaps. How about a Cole Baudouin? Maybe a Caleb Desnoyers. There's a lot of young guys that need to get promoted. They've proven they can play. They just need to prove they can play in the NHL. And Daniil Boot is already doing that. He may not be scoring a lot of goals yet, but Daniil Boot is proving he can play. Yeah, he had that big brain fart against Columbus. I wasn't terribly mad about that because he was trying to make a play, and that's what caused that penalty that leaked over into overtime, allowing Columbus to win the game. So, yeah, this team, it has the potential, and I'm very glad and very proud of myself for saying that this team will make the playoffs before the season started, because they are looking like they definitely can. And what's really interesting about this team is it's not one guy causing this team to move forward. Each night, it's somebody else. And while that can be a little bit scary, you don't have that guy. You don't have that Mitch Marner. You don't have Jack Eichel if you're a Knights fan. You don't have Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar if you're an Avalanche fan. You don't have those guys. You don't have the Mikko Rantanen, the Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene of the Stars. So, Jason Robertson. So, there's not that guy for the Mammoth. Mika Zibanejad is that guy for the Rangers and can be that guy for the Mammoth. This is my public plea to Bill Armstrong to go and get him, because you lost out on Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames, a right-handed defenseman that Utah desperately needs that is offensive. And please don't get Dougie Hamilton. All right, that's a different topic for another show. I'll probably talk about that during the Olympic break for hockey, but that's where the Mammoth are. They're in a very good position. They've been looking fantastic over the last 10 games, other than a couple of stinkers, and I'm just very excited about where this team is headed. All right, on to basketball. The Jazz suck. Does anybody disagree with that? No? Okay. If you want to see better defense, the Harlem Globetrotters are coming to town in February. The Washington Generals will be playing better defense than the Jazz have all season. Okay? That is a fact. Everybody is high on Keontae George. I'm not. Volume shooter. Volume shooters rarely win in the NBA. And he's the worst rated defender in the league. Period. Hands down, bar none. And it's not even close. So, what are we doing? What are we doing, Danny? Danny being Danny Ainge. And what are we doing in that nepotistic front office? Like, what's going on here? This team is not even close to winning. And when the rebuild started a few years ago, I did say that Utah needs to be on a different timeline than the top teams in the league at that time, which were Golden State, the Lakers. You also had, at that time, the Rockets, because, James Harden was there and all that. You needed to be on a different timeline. And Portland as well. Well, now the Thunder have completed their rebuild. They are where the Jazz should be here in a couple of years, right? Well, if we do like that side-by-side comparison of the Thunder and the Jazz, for the Jazz to get where the Thunder are now, I think it'll take another decade. Because Cody Williams is an absolute utter bust. And his draft pick in particular, and I'm going to keep reminding everybody of this, his draft pick in particular is why they overhauled the scouting department and fired everybody there and brought in new people. Because that was such an unmitigated bust. Bryce Sensabaugh, sure, he could be instant offense and has been instant offense off the bench. That is a good draft pick. I will eat crow on that. I thought it was a bust as well, but I think it's actually a good draft pick if he continues on this trajectory. The jury is still out on Taylor Hendricks. He still hasn't had enough time. He is still recovering from that horrific leg injury he had last season. So I'm not going to judge him until the end of next season. Kyle Filipowski, Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, cannot play defense. Period. End of story. The Jazz have the worst defense in the NBA. I said this a couple weeks ago, and it still holds true. They have not held a singular team below 100 points. They are the only team in the NBA that has not had that happen. So, please stop supporting the Jazz. They don't deserve your time. They don't deserve your attention. They don't deserve your money. If you're thinking about watching a Jazz game, go spend time with your family. Go for a walk. Listen to this show and Radio Ronin instead. Because you'll get more enjoyment out of that than you will watching this mess. And maybe it'll send a message to the front office that the fans are sick of it, and let's move on. Which is what I'm doing right now. So let's talk about Utah State. So that's what I get for being high on the Aggies, right? I deserve that. They lost to Grand Canyon, and I did warn everybody that this could be a trap game for them, and it was. So Utah State loses to Grand Canyon in Arizona. Bet you didn't know that they were in Arizona. Well, you probably did just by context clues. But they lost to Grand Canyon 84-74. They're going to fall out of the top 25. That's just the life of the high mid-major, which is what the Mountain West is. That does not mean the season's over. That does not mean the sky is falling. It's a reality check for a team that kind of needed one. So they got their reality check. Now they move on to the rest of their schedule, where, like I said before, the only difficult games left are against San Diego State and New Mexico. That's it. This team can take care of business and go through with one loss in conference. I still firmly believe that. So, reality check. Oops, you lost. You got some attention. Maybe it went to your head a little bit. Reality check from Grand Canyon. The Lopes. And back on track. They're at home against UNLV on the 20th. I'm sure they'll take care of business there. And then they have another warm-up game against Colorado State, a team they beat by 42. So by no means is the season anywhere near over for Utah State. Speaking of seasons being over, Utah. Utah is 1-4 in the Big 12. So much for that goodwill they built up with me against BYU. They lost to Texas Tech, which is fair. BYU did too. They lost to Texas Tech by 14. They did beat TCU by 3. And they are not in the basement. They're one step above the basement. They're 9-9. And by the way, in the Big 12, there's not a singular team below 500. That is pretty cool. So looking at their schedule ahead, they've got Kansas State, the seller team. If they lose that one, I think the wheels will fall off on the season. But they have BYU after that, and then Oklahoma State, Arizona State, Kansas, Houston before Valentine's Day there. So we'll see what happens as we move along. The team lives and dies by their backcourt. They don't really have a front court presence to speak of. So I think Utah could sneak an NIT bid if they can win a few games here. But that loss against Colorado was kind of a stinker. And the loss against Texas Tech was expected. All right, let's move over to BYU. And that loss against Texas Tech, I expected it. By that much? Maybe not by that much. It was not a good game for the Cougars. But, like with the Aggies, it was a reality check. It was a slap in the face. It was the first time A.J. DeBonsa did not score over 20 points this season. He did not look comfortable all game. Richie Saunders shot pretty poorly. He was 3 of 7 from deep. Kennard Davis was 0 of 6 from deep. And the bench was only 3 deep that game. 86% from free throw. That's encouraging, but they only shot 14 of them, so they've got to get to the foul line better. They were 5 of 22 from deep. 23%. That's not going to cut it. And then they were only 42% from the field overall. 27 of 64. They had 12 turnovers to Texas Tech's 10. So this team, reality check. You're not going to be as high on the hog. You just regroup and play better next game. That's what it is. The Big 12 is the toughest basketball conference in the country. Next up is Utah, and then it's the Wildcats of Arizona, number 1 team in the country. Doesn't get any easier. All right, that's the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.